What is going on, guys? We are actually driving the CRX again. On my way over to a guy's house, and I'm going to be tuning his DA Integra. It is a B20V vtec stock bottom end, and he just wants to get it tuned up. So that's what we're gonna do now. I actually had some issues with the CRX earlier today. I threw a timing light on it again, and normally you jump the data link connector, and I could not get this thing to hold a steady timing mark on the timing, or on the crank pulley. So I don't know, it was jumping around like crazy. I could not get it to sit steady, anything. So I don't know. If you guys know anything about the ignition timing, the base ignition timing jumping around a bunch, please let me know. All right, we are working on this Integra DA, and he just swapped out the LS bottom end for a B20 bottom end. The LS actually developed a rod knock, and he just wanted me to come over here and tune it up a little bit. So I just set the ignition timing on the motor. There's actually, it's kind of hard to see on these because there's no timing cover on it, but pretty much there's a mark on the oil pump that you have to match with the crank pulley when you're setting your ignition timing. In this case, the timing was actually at like 2 degrees before top dead center, and I got it set at 16 degrees top dead center now. So distributor's all locked down, and we'll fire this thing up and see how it's running now after I timed it. Now the engine light is flashing because I actually have the data link connector jumped on this car, because obviously the data link connector needs to be jumped to be able to set it at base timing. And as you notice, the idle is bouncing around quite a bit. So hopefully something in the tune can fix that. It could be something in the tune, or on this throttle stop here, this could be set a little bit too low, and it should be set somewhere around right here. But we'll see if we can compensate for it in the tune first. Alright, so I got the ECU kind of out of the hole, and I'm going to be putting my ostrich in. But first I have to frickin' backdate my computer, because Chrome sucks and has not been updated in like 2 years. So I got to change my date to like 2015 or 2014 to lie to my computer so Chrome works. So I just got a base map on this car, and of course now it's going to idle good, but on initial startup the idle is super low. So I'm just taking the idle motor compensator here and turning it up. As you can see, the idle goes up as I turn the idle compensator motor thingy on Chrome up. But I think if we just set it at like, yeah, 0 is too low. I think 10 might be good. Yeah, 10 seems pretty smooth. Why don't you rev it up a little bit and then see what it does when it comes back down. See how it dips like that? So we're gonna add a little more into it. Alright, try it again. There we go, now it's steady. Seems like it at least. And the wideband's telling us we're like 12.5 at idle. Alright, watch it go leaner as I take out 10%. So we're like 13.8. I'm gonna leave it right there until we drive it around and see where everything else is at. Okay, so now we're driving the car around, and the cruising is like 16.0, like where I normally set these cars for good fuel mileage and whatnot. But now we are going to be adding some fuel into wide open, because at wide open it's like 16.0, which is way too lean. So I'm just adding some fuel into the wide open sections between non-VTEC and the VTEC side. And we'll go do another pull and see how it looks. There you go, she was in the 12s there. We'll have to find somewhere where we can actually get on it a little bit though. I usually, when I'm tuning, I like to do like 3rd gear pulls on like an all motor setup. And if it's a turbo car and it makes a shitload of power, you gotta do 4th gear. And it gets kind of scary on the street sometimes, but that's why we go to Mexico. Alright, so right now the car, it was pinging a little bit at like low RPM when I stood on it. I think it was a mixture of it being really rich down low, and a mixture of the timing being too advanced at low RPM. So now I'm adjusting that. And this is a stock bottom end car, so I'm going to be a little bit more cautious on how much ignition I put in it, just because stock bottom end is not as strong. After like 3,500, it's probably fine. Yeah, it's a little rich, but that pulls pretty good. Not bad. That was only like 7,000 too. I didn't really wind it out. I don't really like to wind these bottom ends out that hard because the rod bolts are not the greatest. People say they stretch, and then you spin a bearing and then fucking get rod knock. So we actually had some issues with the car pinging. It was pre-detonating at low RPM. Just at low RPM though, so I think the tune that was on it was just a little bit aggressive down low. And we had to actually pull ignition timing out of the tune below like 2,500 RPM. After that, it seemed to be smooth, and I made my own timing map for the vtec side and whatnot. So now we got the car cruising at like a 16:0 air-fuel ratio, which should be good for fuel mileage on this thing. Okay, so we just got wide open and everything done too, so when you first get into the throttle, it's going to be like a 13.5 air-fuel ratio, and then as it crosses over into VTEC, I got it in the bottom 12s. That will keep this motor alive a little bit longer, I think, being a stock bottom end. You don't really want to run them like 13.5. Usually the richer it is, the safer the motor is going to be, and the cooler everything is going to run. I'm just going to take the tune that I just did and write it to a chip and then put it into his ECU, and we will be all done here. I just got home from running to get a new motor for the EG hatch that we're working on here. The valve cover turned out great. If you guys haven't seen that video, go check it out. But we did just get back and we got a new block for the car here because the other block that we had was junk. The wrist pin backed out of the piston and it ate into the cylinder wall. A little bit too much for comfort, so we got a different block that is good. So we're going to get this block on the engine stand now and get to honing the cylinders out. Alright, so this is the block that we just picked up, and it looks like they got it hot tanked or something at one time. And then these cylinders here are looking like they are pretty glazed over. This just comes with, a motor with some miles on it. But yeah, these cylinders definitely need a hone, so the rings have a good surface to seal to. I'll try to get you a better look here of what we're looking at. So as you can see, hopefully, that the cylinders here are very glazed over and there's not a lot of cross hatching in them. You can barely see any. They're just very dull. And I'm going to hone the cylinders quick and show you what it looks like after a hone. But on these GSR motors, they actually have oil squirters on the bottom. So right here, right here, right here, and right here. You're going to have to take these oil squirters out of the engine before you actually go through and hone it, because if you don't, the cylinder hone is probably going to hit these. So I'm going to take them out quick. So I got one of the cylinders honed. I started off on this side and I'm going to be working my way over to the left. I kind of wanted to show you a comparison quick of what the cylinder looks like after I honed it and before it was honed. So you can see here, that's the cylinder that I just honed. You can see all the scratching and cross hatching on the cylinder now. And then this is the one I have not done, which is dull. It looks like crap. So we will continue to do these last three cylinders. I just kind of wanted to show you the difference between what a honed cylinder looks like and a non-honed cylinder. So this time I figured I'd show you how I hone cylinders. The way you hone cylinders may be different. This is just the way I do it, and it works great for me. First I take some oil. It doesn't really matter what kind of oil. I'm using like tranny fluid right here. And then I just rub it into the cylinder a little bit. You want to get the cylinder nice and oiled up before you take the cylinder hone into it. So, yep, just rub the oil around. Wipe my damn hands off now. And, alright, so I got this cylinder hone pretty much set up for doing this sized motor. A lot of cylinder hones are different, but this is the one that I'm using. It's kind of an old school one. It works really good. It's got like stones on half of it, and then it's got like brushes on the other half. So it definitely does a really good job. But you want to get the cylinder hone into this bore, get it down in there, and then tighten it up a little bit. You want a little bit of resistance. You don't want like a shitload where you can't even move it. That I feel like that's too much. So be able to slide it up and down still easily, but don't go so tight that like, yeah, like right there, I really got to pull up on it to get the cylinder hone to move. So this one has a little dial on it that I can just adjust to feel, and then just run the thing up and down a few times. I usually stick it in here for about 20 to 30 seconds, and that's usually good enough. Notice how I'm moving the cylinder hone up and down as I hold the trigger on the drill. Also, like midway through, I like to tighten it up just a little bit. And I don't know, I feel like it just works better that way. Just get a little bit tighter about halfway through and continue. But like I said, keep the up and down motion. I don't think it's really critical if you just hold it in one spot, but you got to get the whole cylinder. That's why I move up and down like what I'm doing. Alright, now that it's out of the bore, we can kind of clean all this oil up. Grab some brake cleaner, spray that shit out of there, and then take your rag and wipe it out. And it looks like it needs a little bit more honing still. I might have to go a little bit tighter with it. It didn't actually hone all the way around the cylinder. I'll show you here. Okay, so like this side looks okay, but then we go to this side and it looks like the scratching didn't even really touch it. So I think we're gonna have to go a little bit tighter with the cylinder hone, and it should clean up and get all around. But other than that, it looks good. Now I'm gonna continue to hone the rest of these cylinders, and then I'll pick up when the finished product is done, when all the cylinders are honed. Now, next thing I'm going to do here, the cylinders are all honed. They're all looking awesome. And the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to check the deck of the block to make sure everything is flat. Sometimes these blocks can warp if if it had a bad head gasket or something like that and overheated really hard, or blew up or something like that. But this motor was good when he pulled it. So I'm not assuming that any of this is going to be bad, but it's always good to check, especially on a customer car. So this is just a quick and dirty way to do this. This is like a straight edge here, a metal straight edge, and then I have a feeler gauge. So I have the 2000s feeler gauge out here, which I think is like the smallest this goes down to. It might go down to 1 thou. 2000s is probably going to be your best bet here to get a good reading. And what you want to do here is just push down on the straight edge around the block and put the feeler gauge under it, and just make sure you cannot pull the feeler gauge out. And just move it around the block in various spots. And just verify that you cannot pull the feeler gauge out. Alright, this block seems like it's good. So next, I'm going to actually get the piston rings and put piston rings into the bore, and I'm going to check the ring end gap. Alright, so I'm just getting the rings open here, and you're going to have, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to have 5 total rings for your pistons. One is going to be a top ring, which is this guy right here, and then there's going to be a thicker one. This thicker one is going to be your second ring, and then the two really thin rings and this like spring dude are going to be your oil control ring. And the main ones we're going to be checking right now are the first and second ring. These ones are the most important. These ones, you can kind of just throw them in and you should be okay. So I'm going to grab my piston and I'm going to actually put the first ring into the bore. Just like so. And then I'm going to take the top of the piston and push it down into the bore a little bit. There we go. And now we're going to measure the little gap in between where the rings are with the feeler gauge to see how big the ring end gap is. Alright, so it's bigger than 10 thousandths. We'll try 14. We'll try 14. 14 fits. So we'll try 15. We'll go right to 18. Screw it. Okay, 18 does not fit. We'll try 16. It's like 15 thousandths. 16 is very tight. We'll try 15 here just to double check. Yeah, it's like a 15 thousandths ring gap, which sounds a little tight. A lot of times on these good aftermarket pistons, they give you a very tight ring gap to start with, so you can file it down and make it to your desired ring gap. So after sticking the piston ring into the bore and pushing it down with the piston, we got about 15 thousandths of ring gap on the top ring, and the second ring we got about 23 thousandths. This would be okay if it were a naturally aspirated motor. These ring gaps would be suitable, but since this is a boosted application and this guy wants to make north of 500 horsepower, we are going to make the top ring 20 thousandths instead of 15. The problem you run into when you run a small ring gap on a turbo application is when you add more boost to the cylinder, the piston will actually expand in the bore under all this stress of, you know, a lot of boost and whatnot, and this ring end gap will actually close up so tight that it'll butt up against each other, and it'll actually push the ring upward like this, and it'll actually break the top of the piston right off, just like what you've seen on the previous piston. I'll actually grab it quick to show you. You can see on this piston how it is chipped on the top here, and this is a mixture of a few things. This failure was mainly caused by a lot of heat and improper tuning. This can happen with, you know, improper tuning very easily if you run the cylinders very lean, or if you have too much ignition timing in the tune, or whatever the case. But the ring will actually butt up against each other, and then the ring will push on the top of the piston, and it can actually break the piston just like this one did. Like I said, we're going to set this at 20 thousandths. You just want to file one end of the ring down. I have a video on my channel of assembling my Mustang engine, and I go into more detail about how to set ring end gap. So I may put a little thing up here to show you guys that video if you want to go check it out. Now, like I said, we're going to file one side of the ring and set the top ring at 20 thousandths and the bottom ring, or the second ring, at 23 to 25 thousandths. And that way we should be good for over 500 horsepower on E85 fuel. Now, if this were a pump gas motor, I would probably set these a little bit bigger. He's going to be running pump gas on low boost, maybe 300 horsepower, and once we turn it up, I will not be tuning the car unless it's on E85, just because I don't like running boost above 10 pounds on pretty much any motor with regular pump gas. I always like to switch to E85. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the start of this engine build. I finally actually got to find a block for it. As you know, that other block is completely shot, so we didn't really have a choice. This was the cheapest option, just to get a different block, and this one is looking great, so we should have no problem getting this thing together. I'm probably going to assemble the bottom end tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that video, and thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you guys are new. I am trying to post daily, or at least like maybe every other day if I run behind or something. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy the daily uploads. It's definitely kind of a lot of work filming everything, and then going about my normal day, and then at night editing and uploading and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. So yeah, till next time guys, we will see you in the next video.